Hey guys, Jim here with another video for you. This is Drive-In Memories, Volume 3, One Crazy Summer, 1986. But before I begin, at the end of this video, if you like what you see, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a possible subscribe. Most importantly, please leave comments below. Let me know how you feel about this movie, or this video, how you felt about this series in general, how you feel about these films that I'm going to showcase here. Now, the reason why I kept this video separate from the other two installments is because in 1986, I actually worked at the McHenry Drive In as a projectionist and as a security person. And previous to that, I had worked at the McHenry Indoor Theater as an usher and a projectionist for a couple of years. And the supervisor asked me at the time if I'd be interested in working at the drive-in that summer since I was 18. And I said, absolutely. And it turned out to be one of the best summers of my life. It also had some incredible movies that summer. But more importantly, some of the experiences that I went through, I'll remember until the day I die. Now, I said earlier that I was going to focus this video mainly on the memories that I had working. But I wasn't really sure how to go about this. And I ran a poll asking people how they wanted me to tell some of these stories, if they wanted me to keep it G-rated, PG-13 rated, or quite honestly, NC-17, telling it like it really is. Well, unsurprisingly, the NC-17 version won out big time. So I am putting a couple of caveats on this video. There's going to be a lot of stuff in this video that is definitely not safe for work, definitely not safe for younger viewers or listeners, and certainly not designed to trigger or upset anyone. You must remember, this was 1986. Times were different then. I'm not saying that some of the behavior that I did was right or wrong. Some of it was definitely wrong. But again, I was an 18-year-old kid. I'm a 57-year-old man now. I'm a different person now than I was then. So we're going to break this video basically up into two parts. I am going to showcase the movies, like I always do. But as I said, this was one crazy summer for sure. And this movie actually did play that summer, theatrically, at that drive-in. But we're going to use this as our little warning label. I'm going to start off doing what I always do. I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the movies. And then I'm going to take this video out and put it back out and zoom in, just like that. And at that point, I'm going to start telling stories, but I will give people one final warning about some of the stuff that's about to come. At that point, if you feel that you don't want to watch and you turn off the video, believe me, I am not going to be upset in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to make sure that everybody enjoys this video to the extent that they can. So let's have fun with this, okay? So we're going to start off with some of the movies that came out. And again, these are certainly not all the movies I played at that drive-in that summer. These are simply the ones that I own. And I am also going to mention some other movies that played that summer when we get to the story section. So again, let's just enjoy ourselves, and I hope you do enjoy yourself listening to me babble on. So here we go. Early that year, these movies were basically are in chronological order, okay? The drive-in opened right at the mid part of May for weekends only, and then Memorial Day weekend, it would open 7 days a week through Labor Day weekend. So we're talking May through September, or through August into early September. And I remember in May, this movie came out, Short Circuit, with Steve Guttenberg, Ali Sheedy, and Fisher Stevens, directed by John Badham. John Badham is a journeyman director, and he's made some incredible films like Saturday Night Fever, Blue Thunder, Stakeout, The Hard Way. This is not one of his outstanding films, although this movie was a huge hit and spawned a sequel, which is even worse than this one. Never been a fan of this movie. The big movie that summer was Top Gun. And we certainly had this movie at that drive-in. And it was there for at least 3 weeks. And we did not get it day one. I mean, that just shows the staying power of this movie. It was a big, big hit. And what's funny is at the time, Air Force people trying to join up for the Air Force tripled with how many people were walking into Air Force recruiting offices because of this movie. And the ironic thing is these are Navy pilots, not Air Force pilots. I always thought that was funny. We definitely had this one. Cobra with Stallone. We had a lot of canon movies that summer. But Cobra was probably the biggest hit out of all of them. And again, action movies like this definitely played like gangbusters at the drive-in. As a matter of fact, there was a couple of moments in this movie where people were laying on their horns and flashing their lights. And yeah, this movie, again, it's about the closest thing to a horror movie Stallone's ever done. But, you know, it's not one of my top favorites, but it's an entertaining movie. Now, this is a double pack, but the movie that I'm talking about is Back to School. This played on a double feature with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And both of those movies were huge. We had that double feature for 2 weeks straight. The thing about drive-ins, unlike most movie theaters, is they tend to change out at least one of the two movies every week. Very rarely do they keep both movies for more than 1 week, and it's even rarer if they keep one of those movies for more than 2 weeks. But I do remember we had both of those films for 2 weeks straight. This one was also part of a double feature. Running Scared with Gregory Hines, Billy Crystal, and Jimmy Smits, Joe Pantoliano. Yeah, this one's directed by Peter Hyams. And just like John Badham, Peter Hyams has directed some incredible films. He directed 2010, Capricorn 1, he's a great director. Outland. He's just an incredible director, and I love this movie. Rest in peace, Gregory Hines. And I think this is one of Billy Crystal's funniest movies. But yeah, I've always loved this movie, and again, it's got a Chicago connection. And again, McHenry is one of the northern suburbs of Chicago. I was living in Illinois at this time. I live in Wisconsin now. But yeah, love Running Scared. But that played on a double feature with arguably the funniest movie of that year, Ruthless People. Starring Danny DeVito, Bette Midler, Judge Reinhold. This movie is it's a classic. And this was the movie debut for Bill Pullman. This was his big screen debut. And he steals the movie from everybody. This is, again, one of my favorite comedies of the 80s. I wish that this would finally get a Blu-ray release, but it hasn't happened yet. But yeah, love it. We had this one. Psycho 3. It is a weird movie, man. I mean, I remember people, walking to the concession stand in the middle of this movie going, what the hell is this? But yeah, I enjoy it. This one's actually directed by Anthony Perkins and co-stars Jeff Fahey. And yeah, I enjoy this movie. It's definitely not as good as Psycho 2, and it's certainly not as good as the original. But yeah, I have fun with Psycho 3. I think it's a fun movie. In the last movie before we get to story time, from my Alien set, Aliens. Now, Aliens was a huge hit, okay? Again, we did not get this movie right away at the drive-in, but we did get it in the middle of the summer. We had it for like 2 weeks. And I mentioned in the Years in Film, 1986, that Aliens played like gangbusters, like a rock concert at the regular theater, because I was an usher at that theater as well, after the summer was over. Now you're wondering, how could I have seen the audience reaction to Aliens if I was working at the drive-in at the time? Okay, the reason why is because The Fly also came out at the end of the summer. It came out in August, and it was a big hit. And Aliens was still playing theatrically at the time. And about 2 weeks, no, not even, about a month into both of their runs, Fox did a special 1 week double feature in all theaters of Aliens and The Fly. They were trying to get that last squeeze of money out. And that's when I saw the audience reaction to Aliens. Now, I had already seen the audience reaction to The Fly because, again, that one played, it came out after Aliens, and it we had that at the drive or at the indoor before they did that double feature. But like the indoor reaction when people would, stand up and cheer during the "Get Away From Her, You Bitch" line, at the drive-in when that happened, people were laying on their horns and lighting up their lights and screaming out the windows, yeah! I mean, because people tend to be a little more vocal at a drive-in than they do at an indoor, okay? Because they're outside. And this movie definitely played like a rock concert at the drive-in as well. It was just such a phenomenal movie, still is. Okay, it's story time. We're going to get into some of the stuff that went on the rest of that summer. We are still going to show off a couple more movies, but for the most part, we're going to be talking about stuff, for movies that I don't own. But I just wanted to throw this up there to give everybody plenty of time to, if you want to cut out now, this would be the time. And we're going to count down from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome back. And here we go. This was definitely one crazy summer, okay? I'm going to give you a couple of stories here. Now, the first one isn't raunchy or anything, but it is kind of funny, okay? About halfway through the summer, we had a double feature of Haunted Honeymoon and Vamp. Two movies that most people don't even remember. If they remember either of them, it's usually Vamp, okay? But quite honestly, I was underwhelmed with both of them at the drive-in when I saw them. But I went in one night early. It was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. I went in early to set up, and it was storming, rainstorm, heavy downpour on the way to work. And I thought, okay, maybe I should pull over, and let this pass. And about that time, the clouds parted, and I thought, hey, cool. It was just a passing cloud, and drove to work. Well, we had these big barricades, these wooden barricades that blocked the exits that were chained together. And I got out of my car, moved one, pulled in, put it back into place, pulled my car in behind the concession stand. And if any of you have seen my little short video, you know the lay of the place. And about the time that I got into the theater behind the concession stand with my car, it started drizzling again, and the skies got very dark, and it got very windy. But I didn't think much of it because I grew up in this area. I'm used to it. So I got out, started walking towards the concession stand, and out of nowhere, and this is no exaggeration, gusts of wind started hitting me so hard it almost blew me over, and I was blinded from all the gravel flying around. So rather than jump back in my car, I decided to make a break for it, and I ran to the projection booth and got in. I'm not kidding. I'm not saying it was a tornado, because there was no damage anywhere other than the fact that I heard a train go over my head. And 5 minutes later, when I went out, I looked, and those barricades, which weighed at least 30 to 40 pounds each, were about 20 feet further down than where I originally had them. And the whole time that experience was happening, all I kept thinking to myself is, am I going to fucking die for Haunted Honeymoon? Yeah. Now we'll go a little bit further, okay? One of our little scams, if you want to call it that, was the drinking age in Illinois at the time, and it is now as well, is 21 years of age. I was 18. Now, a lot of people for years have been bringing their own refreshments into the drive-in, and with coolers, for soda or whatever, and certain adults will bring beer and other beverages, and let's just say certain kids would as well. And as part of my job, I would walk around as security, and if I saw anybody that I thought was underage and they were partying and doing their thing, generally, if they were being cool, I left them alone. If they were being even remotely being an asshole, I would shine my mag light in their face and basically tell them that they had two choices. They could either give me half of their beer and or drugs, and then they could stay as long as they remain quiet, or they could get the hell out right now. And by the way, I'd be calling the cops the second that I got back to the concession stand. So they would probably be waiting right outside. Let's just say I had a 75% rate of getting free beer and or weed. If they had any other kind of drugs, I wasn't interested. But that became kind of a thing with me and my two fellow stoner security guys. And rather than party with it, well, we did with the weed, but for the beer, we kept in a secret cooler in the concession stand that nobody ever used and stored it up for the summer. And at the end of the year, the last movies that we had that summer were Never Too Young to Die, which is one of the worst movies ever made, and Manhunter, which is a great movie. But after the place closed, and we did this and that, we snuck back in with about 30 invited friends and had a kegger. Well, what a kegger without a keg, because it was all the beer that we had confiscated all summer long. About 30 of us went through the equivalent of about 30 cases of beer that night. Not to mention all the weed and stuff that we hadn't smoked earlier. It was one hell of a party. Okay? And some things went on that I won't go into now, but yeah, it was one hell of a party. Now, again, I'm not condoning underage drinking, but hey, I was 18. I wouldn't, if I look back now, shit, that's not even true. Even then, I would probably look back and say, hey, go for it, kid. Great time. Okay, moving right along. While we were scamming all that beer out, one of the best hauls we ever had was this movie, Friday the 13th. Because again, there was a bunch of kids that were acting like assholes, drinking this and that and the other, but they were kids that I actually went to high school with that were a year younger than me. And they knew that I knew that they were not of age. And I busted them hard. I took all of their shit that night. Because of Friday the 13th, Part 6, I scored 3 cases of beer and almost 2 ounces of marijuana. That's one of the reasons why I love this movie to this day. My brother Greg, I did a tribute to him recently. And on one of my nights off, me, him, and a friend of mine went to another drive-in. It was called the Route 53 Drive-In. It actually had 3 drive-in screens. And the nice thing is they had 3 movies each on the weekends, and you could switch screens and make up your own lineup. So we went there. My buddy didn't smoke, but he drank. So my brother Greg bought him some Bacardi rum and some beer. And the 3 of us went. Greg didn't drink, but he smoked. And I smoked and drank. And the 3 of us got totally wasted. And wait until you see this triple feature. The first movie was Legend with Tom Cruise and Mia Sara, and of course, the wonderful Tim Curry, directed by Ridley Scott. This was the first movie of that triple feature. And anybody who's seen Legend, this movie is so goddamn dark, we had no idea what we were watching. All I could hear was Tim Curry's voice and Tom Cruise prancing around in a field looking at unicorns. I like this movie. I don't love it, but I do love Tim Curry in it. But yeah, like I said, that first time seeing it, I had no clue what the hell I was watching. I did see this at the indoor later on that summer. Early fall. I saw it at the theater that I worked at. And I do enjoy it, but not great. But that was the first movie. By this time, the second movie came on. We were good and wasted. And boy, it probably helped because we watched Cocaine the Movie, a.k.a. Maximum Overdrive, directed by Stephen King. This is like the quintessential drive-in movie. I mean, this is perfect for drive-ins. And oh my God, I love this movie. Have loved it since that time when I was so fucked up. that I couldn't see straight. But as soon as I heard Stephen King going, "Hey, honey, this machine just called me an asshole," I immediately fell in love with this movie, and to this day. By the end of this movie, I was so wasted I could barely walk. And what's the third movie that we tried to watch? Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, which I would also call Cocaine the Movie Part 2. I mean, because it's literally Toby Hooper and Dennis Hopper whacked out of their minds on cocaine. And yeah, this is like one of the craziest canon movies, and I love it. But yeah, I gotta admit, that first time around, no idea what the hell I was watching. And yeah, R.I.P., brother. It's still one of my favorite memories. We had a great time that night. Okay, we're going to go back to a couple other stories here. We had a double feature. Let me find it here. I'm sorry. I'm rambling here. It doesn't matter. Oh, here it is. We had a double feature of Shanghai Surprise, that horrible, horrible Madonna Sean Penn movie that nobody remembers, and Howard the Duck, which George Lucas would like to forget. The biggest fight I have ever been part of happened during that double feature for some reason. I think it was because people were revolting at the 3.5 hours worth of bullshit they were watching on screen. But about 20 guys started going at it. And my boss at the time, his name was Mr. Nichols. He's probably long dead by now. And if he is, rest in peace. You were awesome, awesome boss. But he was an older guy. He was probably about my age now, okay? Late 50s. He stood about 6'6" and weighed about 350 pounds. The guy was huge. We called him Lurch from the Addams Family character. When that fight broke out, he and the other 3 guys ran in the middle of it after we had somebody call the cops, of course. And he charged into this pit with reckless abandon and started throwing people left and right. And all I kept on doing was dodging people left and right like a fucking bullfighter. I mean, one guy actually flew by me and went headfirst into the side of the car, dented the car, and the guy who was inside the car got so pissed off, he got out of the car and started kicking the shit out of the guy whose head just slammed into it. I mean, it was chaos, okay? Somebody threw a beer bottle and hit me in the back of the head with it. Luckily, it was empty, because if it was full, it probably would have killed me. And it did not shatter. It just bounced off my head. No stitches, no blood. I had a goose egg for about a week on the back of my head. But that was the worst fight we ever had. But I gotta admit, it was kind of fun. At that moment, I realized this is the only job I've ever had in my life where I could drink, smoke, fight, and get laid, and get paid for it. Yeah, one crazy summer indeed. All right, we got 2 more stories for you, and they are both sexual in nature. And I want to start by saying I am not the type of guy who brags about his love life. Never have. I don't respect guys that do. But these 2 stories are kind of funny. The first one, it was a double feature of Poltergeist 2 and Raw Deal, the Schwarzenegger classic where he murdered, molested, and mutilated her. I was at that theater that night, on my night off, actually. And I ran into a girl that I went to high school with earlier. She was a year ahead of me in school, actually. But I hadn't seen her in 2 years. And I chased this girl for 3 years in high school, and she wouldn't give me the time of day. She was nice to me, and she would talk to me and shit, but never gave me the time of day. And I ran into her just by circumstance. And by luck would have it, she had just broken up with her boyfriend and went to the drive-in for a little bit of payback. And she ran into me. And guess what? I didn't give a shit if I was being used. We'll just say that I raw dogged it during Raw Deal in a 1984 Chevy Cavalier, which is not an easy thing to do. Thank God for fully bendable front seats. Okay. We're going to end on this story because this one, again, it's sexual in nature, but it is kind of funny. And I'm not embellishing this in any way, shape, or form. The movie About Last Night with Rob Lowe, Demi Moore. That was playing. Now, I was on the clock this night. And went to a group, took their weed and half their beer or whatever because they were being obnoxious or whatever. But they weren't all couples. There was about 10 guys and about 15 girls, believe it or not. They were all just hanging out. And I never met any of these kids, okay? First time I ever met them was that night when I kind of shut them down. But they thought I was so cool by not calling the cops. And they had plenty of stuff, so they were all good about it. And one girl kind of gave me the eye a little bit. So I was like, hey, cool. Well, About Last Night was the second movie that played that night. And about a half hour before it was over, I decided to walk over to see how things were going back there. And this girl was sitting on the hood of her car. And she kind of patted it and told me to sit down next to her. And I sat down next to her. We started talking and started making out. And the next thing you know, she unzips my fly and starts going down on me right there while I'm sitting on the hood of the car on the clock. That's all one said and good and whatever. But about that time, what do I see coming out of my peripheral vision on my left side? But Lurch, my boss. He's kind of hard to miss. And he's walking right towards us. And he's got his flashlight on. And there is absolutely no way in hell he does not know what's going on. So he kind of flashes the light in my face, looks at me and says, what's going on here, Jim? And I said the first thing that popped into my head. She dropped her contact lens and she's looking for it. He said, well, when she finds it, come to the office. And I'm thinking, I am so fucking fired. She finished up. I said, thank you very much. Smoked a quick cigarette and walked to my doom. Walked in, knocked on the door, said, yeah, Mr. Nichols, you wanted to see me? He looked at me and he said, yeah, a couple of the letters fell off the outside marquee. Make sure you go take care of it. Smiled and went back to his paperwork. The best boss ever. I hope you guys enjoyed this little trip down memory lane. And again, I hope I didn't lose any of you along the way. But if I did, I'm sorry. I did give you plenty of warning about this one crazy summer. We'll see you on the next one, guys.